Welcome. We're so glad you're here. We've got a wonderful group of people leaders from around the world. And I know you can only see us, but trust that there's an incredible group of people. Um, we love gatherings like this. These to us are very intentionally strategized. We love these opportunities to just slow down a bit, to focus in, to explore some of the big questions that shape how we all work and how we lead and how we grow our organizations. If you're new to us, people made partners with organizations to create brands and cultures that reflect who they truly are at the core. We help drive purpose and performance and long-term impact, both inside the organization and out. And central to that is the employee experience, how your people experience your culture, not just in theory, but in practice. So that's what we're here to explore today, particularly around multi-generational workplaces. Um, a quick note before we begin. You'll notice that we're not using any slides today. This is not a static, formal presentation. That's intentional. We designed this to be a live conversation. So no screen shares, no decks, just people, ideas, some exchanges of questions and responses. So we invite you to listen closely. Time's going to go by pretty fast. We just have half an hour for this and just feel part of the group in this moment for us. We're lucky to be with a few of our brilliant team members who are going to help guide today's conversation. Elle Davidson, who's our head of strategy, and Fru, who's our insights expert. I'll let them introduce themselves in a bit. And I'm Kat Egan. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm American. I'm based here in New York. I'm honored. I'm always energized to work with this brilliant team at People Made. As I mentioned, today's conversation, as you probably noticed, is called Future Proof Your Employee Experience. And we'll be exploring how to build experiences that aren't just fit for now, but will fit for what's next into the future. We're leaving about 5 minutes at the end of this conversation for your questions. So if something sparks an idea or a challenge you're having or something you're curious about, please drop it into the chat. And we'd love to hear from you. All right, let's dive in. Fru, I'll start with you. In your opinion, how is the fabric of the workplace changing with the rise of younger workers?
Sure. Hi, my name is Fru Bekefi. I'm a cultural insights expert who specializes in futures and commercial semiotics. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. So thank you for inviting me. And to answer your question, Kat, I think it's important to remember a few first principles. So the first is that each generation basically rebels against previous cohorts' truisms, particularly those that are no longer fit for purpose. And it's also worth remembering, therefore, that younger workers are often dismissed as lazy and entitled. We've seen these accusations leveled at Gen Z workers, but this is criticism that Gen Xers and millennials also got in their time. But often their workplace demands expose profound systemic failures. So the shift that I'm just going to talk about in a second, are important to contextualize as well, against a backdrop of what we're seeing unfold currently, which is that younger workers are entering organizations during an era of eroding social safety nets, unprecedented mental health challenges, and growing economic inequities that really make finding pathways to financial security very challenging. And in fact, we've seen that, and we've heard research suggests that 40% of Gen Zers say they feel stressed or anxious most of the time. This is from a Deloitte piece of research from 2024. And if we look at wider social dynamics, there's certainly a sense of grievance, which is making trust and belonging quite difficult. 61% of people globally, according to the latest Edelman Trust Barometer, have a moderate or high sense of grievance, which means they believe that governments and businesses serve narrow interests. So it's important to think of these three shifts in light of those challenges that we see across society, which also can show up in the workplace. Um, so the first shift that I would highlight is that younger cohorts are less bound than older generations to traditional models of long-term employer loyalty, as they balance, on the one hand, the need for financial stability with finding opportunities that align with their values. For example, nearly one-fifth of younger workers, according to EY research in 2025, expect to work for six or more companies in their lifetimes. And around 90% of Gen Zers and millennials in the UK agree that working for a company that shares their values and ethics is important for workplace satisfaction and well-being. And this is, again, research by Deloitte from 2024. So 45, it's quite interesting to see how this plays out in the workplace. So 45% of millennials in the UK say that they've rejected a potential employer because of a lack of alignment in values and beliefs, whilst 54% of Gen Zers say that they have rejected assignments or project work because it was out of touch with their values. And the reason why this is interesting or to consider, because this job hopping tendency also means that retention and engagement strategies need to evolve as younger cohorts have changing expectations, particularly when it comes to programs that are geared towards supporting mental, physical, and even financial well-being. And this brings me on to the second shift, which is that for younger generations, traditional milestones like home ownership and financial security feel increasingly hard to come by in this particular point in time, which definitely influences workplace dynamics, particularly when it comes to their expanded definitions of well-being, which include concepts like financial fitness as well. So it's interesting to note that 51% of younger cohorts, according to EY, view physical and mental health as their primary success metric, which, to be fair, is closely followed by family relationships and wealth. If we look at global tendencies. But leaning heavier into this financial wellness side of things, they're also more willing to talk about money in order to learn about how to make savvier decisions than older generations, particularly when it comes to making investment decisions and saving up for retirement. 65% of young adults, for example, want to have more open discussions about money, and 55% believe that their financial health directly impacts their mental and physical health. And they're not necessarily unique in this, but certainly their needs signal, wider shifts in employee well-being. Because according to recent research by Grant Thornton, for example, 70% of workers suffer from financial stress. So offering targeted support is something that we're seeing become increasingly important. And the third point, and the third shift that we're seeing when it comes to how younger workers are influencing changing workplace culture is the fact that, this emphasis on well-being is also tangible when we look at this cohort's demand for better inclusion policies, which really highlight the role that psychological and physical safety plays in improving workplace performance and thereby contributing to business success. So if we look at Gen Z, for example, in global North countries like the US, the UK, Canada, and across Western Europe, they are the most ethnically and racially diverse generation. They are also more likely to identify as LGBTQIA+, which reflects wider social trends. 23.1% of Gen Zers, 14.2% of millennials, And 5.1% of Gen Xers, for example, embrace this label in the US compared to only 3% of boomers. And these demographic shifts mean that, well, they also resonate with cultural change that demands greater inclusivity, flexibility, and accommodation. Um, because employees have increasingly complex and varied life circumstances. We're seeing people have caregiving responsibilities that they have to juggle alongside work. So, when it comes to looking at Gen Z's impact in particular, one of the biggest areas of influence in the workplace is destigmatizing conversations around mental health and neurodivergence, which partially is thanks to social media's role in raising awareness and promoting coping tools. Um, 30% of adults under 30 identify as neurodivergent, by the way, I think in the US, compared to only 6% of Americans 65 and older. Whereas, according to King's College in the UK, more adults identify as neurodivergent than not. And of course, this brings with it a set of very particular accommodations needs, which in turn point to just how important flexibility and inclusivity is currently and will be going forward. Things like being accommodating to those who need to look after children or elderly parents, or designing training programs that account for cognitive diversity and different learning styles are actually quite good for business, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But I think that's enough scene setting from me.
Amazing. And obviously, we could talk about this for hours. There's so much to dive into with just the past little over 5 minutes that we talked about this. Thank you so much. Elle, I'm curious to get your thinking. What tensions are being created with this increasingly multi-generational workforce?
Thanks, Kat, and hi everyone. Firstly, I think it's a really interesting time because we're at a time that we've never had before where we now have five generations in some instances all working alongside each other. So this is a new challenge that businesses are facing. And in our work with clients globally on culture transformation, employee experience, and in talent attraction projects, there are a number of tensions that are starting to bubble to the surface. That are really interesting. And I've got four that I'm going to cover briefly today. The first one probably isn't a big surprise, but I think the whole return to office debate is a really, really interesting one. And there's a lot of disagreements here, generationally and, attitudinally. We know that younger generations typically want to be in the office more because they value that time learning, absorbing, and sort of by osmosis, being around people, and don't always have as much space for working from home as well. Then we seem to have kind of in the middle, there's generations who like a more hybrid setup. And then there's those typically sort of the more senior leaders who might like to hark back to pre-COVID times when everyone was in the office 5 days a week. So there's lots of different schools of thought here, and to a lesser or bigger degree, depending on where businesses are in the world. But I think it's interesting here because what's overriding all of that is a desire for community. Everyone wants that. It's just about where and how does it happen. And then the other thing that everyone agrees on is this need for flexibility as well across generations, whether that's to enable side hustles and side projects and being able to take those on, managing caring responsibilities of children or aging parents, or pursuing sabbaticals and other interests. So yeah, there's a huge amount to unpack there, but it is creating attention. The second one that we're seeing more so in the UK and Europe, I'd say, is the debate around work-life boundaries. And what we're seeing is that attitudes to working outside core hours does seem to differ by generation, which I think goes back to Fru's point earlier on younger generations prioritizing mental health and well-being, and seeing, not responding to emails or attending meetings on the weekend, being a sort of a need to self-preserve. and ensure that they can bring their best self. But that's obviously something that is a really sort of intrinsic part of some workplace cultures. So again, there's some interesting tensions coming through there, and I think generations are learning from each other on that as well in some cases. The third one is around adoption and of technologies and AI. And again, there's a huge amount here around with different generations and their approaches to this. What we're seeing in the work that we do is that younger generations, although perhaps more digitally native and quicker to adopt technologies, do also have a lot of fear of job loss because they haven't had the time and years of experience to build their profile and their skill set and enough time to understand the value that they can bring to a role. So there's that sort of adoption of the technologies, but also understanding sort of the role that humans can play within that and where that sits in future hybrid teams where you could imagine you might have bots and people working together to get the work done. So bringing everyone along the journey, I think, is really key with that one. And then the final one, just to cover quickly, is this very idea of what professionalism is really does seem to differ by generation. And there's loads of sort of online memes and jokes about this of sort of, going back to the lazy sort of stereotypes that Fru touched on earlier. But we are seeing that there's differences in expectation of communication style, office etiquette, meeting etiquette, and how things should run. And I think this is where culture becomes really important because when you don't have a commonly agreed way of doing things as a business, it becomes very subjective and it's just down to sort of line manager preferences, really. So yeah, those are my top four.
That's quite a lot. Thank you, Elle. So what are some of the strategies that organizations can think about implementing to bridge this gap between these 5 different generations in the workplace?
Yeah, I think there's a few, and the great news is that we're seeing some practical things work really well with our clients. The first one as a general one is really just it sounds basic, but listen to what your people want. I think it's very easy to generalize and make assumptions. But the reality is that we know that each business and each person is very unique, and the makeup of people that you'll have within your organization is unique. So really just taking the time to go out and listen to what people actually need is a great first step, and then tailoring your approaches accordingly. The second one I think is it's really important is there's a greater need than ever to find ways to help different generations connect. Because often mistrust and generalization is bred from a lack of understanding of different perspectives and where people are coming from. So anything that businesses can do to build those bridges and encourage different tribes to interact is really going to help build that understanding. So it could be something as small as a running club to your social activities, to mentoring, reverse mentoring, but really looking to intentionally build those multi-generational teams and get people working together and creating that in a safe space where the psychological safety is there. You remove the hierarchies where you can, that good ideas can come from anywhere and that those perspectives and ideas can be freely shared. Financial support is another really practical one that we're seeing as well. And increasingly, we're seeing businesses offer very practical financial support to younger generations, whether that's food vouchers, extending loans, or assisting with pensions as well, just to really increase that financial security that Fru touched on. And then the final one, just around talent attraction, that's really interesting now, especially in a lot of the EVP work that we do on a global scale, is that what we're seeing now is that obviously different generations have different priorities when they're looking for a role. So the need to create a segmented approach to talent attraction is needed to really speak to those needs, whether that's considering benefits packages and tailoring them to people's priorities or offering them a menu that they can then choose from based on what's most relevant for their stage of life. We're working with a hotel brand at the moment that does just that, and it works really well. So although that umbrella is still needed of an overarching talent strategy and EVP, that segmented approach is really key.
Thank you. This is for either of you. It just sparked something for me, particularly around the people who have joined us today, who are leaders in people and culture. So putting myself in your shoes, what role does leadership play in managing across multi-generational workshop? How can leaders be more prepared? And this is for either of you.
Go ahead, Elle. I'll follow.
Okay, I've got a few quick ones. I think it's really important for leaders to go into listening mode. This goes back to finding out what your people really need, but listening and really hearing and being open to other ways of doing things, being flexible, and instead of reverting back to muscle memory of ways that we've always done things, trying to find a new way forward that meets these changing and dynamic needs.
Great. Fru, anything
Yeah.
to add to that?
Yeah, it's more of a yes. And, I think sometimes there is this preconception that flexibility, that inclusion can be inconvenient and perhaps fleeting trends, but actually, um, it's a huge opportunity to improve processes that further down the line or sooner than you might think can unlock competitive advantage. Um, in 2023, for example, Accenture found that companies that led on key disability inclusion criteria saw 1.6 times more revenue and 2.6 times more net income, and even double the profit than their competitors. So I think that's quite important to highlight because it shows that it's something that has economic value. Yeah.
Great. Thank you for your insights and wisdom. I want to leave room for our guests to ask a few questions and inquiries and challenges they might have. So just a reminder, if you want to throw those in the chat. But one last question for the panel. If businesses get this right, so many ideas that you've put into this mix, what opportunity might that unlock for the future? Big question.
This is the one that really excites me because I really do believe that we're at a pivotal moment right now where there's an opportunity to make a huge amount of progress in a short space of time. This is about redesigning the structures of the workplace that have remained largely unchanged for the last 100 years. And now we've got the energy and the opportunity here to really sort of rewrite some rule books and think about the world of work in a different way. So for those people and businesses and leaders who are happy to lead into that, it's all there for the taking. And the flip side of that is the risk, being with this sort of sea change that's happening, that businesses that resist are the ones that will really suffer and in losing top talent and losing relevance as well.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely echo that. I think the innovation thrives on diversity. It thrives on inclusion. It does not thrive on monocultures. So being able to, have a workforce that is empowered to contribute to your business by sharing their ideas, their experiences, is going to be super important in this like volatile and highly changeable landscape. And actually having, being able to foster generational dialogue and incorporate different outlooks and tensions really is, I think, where some of the most exciting solutions and opportunities are going to be coming down the road.
Excellent. So much to think about. Well, by the way, we'll be sharing this panel so you can extract it because I know it's a lot to digest, but we're seeing some questions come in. To both of you, can you think of any examples you could share of brands that have been really successful in adapting, I should say, in this area?
I can go first on this one. There's one that comes to mind that our friends in the UK will definitely know, Currys, which is a retailer, and they've been on the high street for 100 years, so they're not a new brand. And the reason that they're still here today at a time when so many high street brands aren't is because of their openness and adaptability to change. And they've done that through a number of really innovative practices around rethinking flexible contracts, attracting diverse talent, and really changing and evolving, welcoming and introducing digital experiences alongside the physical high street. You know, they've come at this from all sorts of different directions, and it's been really successful. And they're still here and thriving when many of their peers are not.
I would also add, just as another indicator of how DE&I policies are not a trend, but actually a source of competitive advantage. Costco has been doing extremely well in the US, and a part of that has to do with their reputation as being good employers. Obviously, they're also highly competitive on pricing, and they have a particular business model that means they can speak to a number of different values that people have. But it is a great example of a company whose reputation as a good employer, resonates with their shoppers as well as their employers. Like it delivers multiple benefits, basically.
Brilliant. I love this question. And yeah, this is important. Our next generation, Gen Alpha, what should we expect from this generation? Any thoughts?
I think what we'll see, I don't know if anyone has seen, maybe we will circulate after a few weeks ago, a YouTube video went viral where a high school teacher is trying to speak Gen Alpha. And if you're not fluent in brain rot, then you might struggle to understand what he's saying. But what that viral video highlights is, a point that Elle raised earlier, which is that communication styles and language is changing drastically because of the different platforms that people are on and very different cultural references that come about from a more fragmented media landscape. So on the one hand, it's too early, really, to talk about what Gen Alpha are going to be as employees. But what we know for a fact is that, that communication piece is something that is going to remain a challenge. So it's a good time to start thinking about how to bring people together in ways that are, meaningful, fun, and encourage intergenerational empathy.
Mm. I know we're at time, so if you have to jump, jump. Know that we will send you a recording. I have one more question, and this is I feel an important one. Can you, either of you, both of you, talk about some strategies that you've seen, and we've seen plenty that people made, how to increase talent retention for this younger generation? So increase talent retention, maybe increase their loyalty, their sense of belonging to a company.
Yeah, I think the big one is investing in L&D. So younger generations and younger talent that we're seeing, the thing that they're really hungry for is skills, growth, development, that ability to really see a career path and be empowered to grow and develop in their own way. So investing in your L&D programs and really shouting about them, I think is a way to keep talent longer. And then the sense of belonging, I think this is where the inclusivity and community and finding ways to do that in a way that's authentic to your business is really key.
Okay. Fru, anything?
No, I think
Great.
that was as much as I had.
Some more questions are coming in. I'm going to request this from our lovely group of people, leaders. We're here. Just shoot us an email with questions. We can grab 15 minutes and have some, this is our gift. This was our gift. another gift is just to continue the conversation as you like and just jump on a quick Teams and or through email. The recording will be shared, and if it sparks something as you listen to it again and or share with your team, we love, love, love these deep discussions. You can tell that we get quite passionate and a bit nerdy about this particular topic across cross generalization and employee experience and culture. So thank you so much. Have a lovely lunch if you're here in the States, and a lovely evening if you're in the UK. And please stay in touch. And thank you again for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great question.